for Super Bowl 50. We had the most fantastic crowd here. Thank you guys so much for being here with us. We're at Fort Mason Center, beautiful Golden Gate Bridge behind us, and we are so excited to be here. Gentlemen, Skip Bayless, Stephen A. Smith, good morning. How are we doing?
Good to see you.
Good. So good to see you.
I got to drive home what you just said.
Please do.
I need to make a point to our viewing audience just how great these Bay Area First Take fans are for coming out here so early. Thank you. Thank you. And I got to tell you, this isn't the easiest place to get to.
No
so thank you for getting here.
Yes.
Thank you.
So true.
Ditto.
Ditto.
Yes, thank you guys again. You guys are the best. And also joining us today, Matt Ryan, his team, the only team to beat, of course, the Carolina Panthers, the Atlanta Falcons. So Matt Ryan will be here with us. Oh, whatever. Be nice. It's too early for this, Skip. And friend of the show, Brandon Marshall, will also be into the house. We heard some new news, some Jets rumors. We'll get to that as well. But
Do we
gentlemen,
get to talk about Jay Cutler when he gets here? Maybe?
No. They weren't roommates.
I think you know I'll figure a way to bring up Jay Cutler.
Stephen A. does love him some Cuddy. All right, we ready to work, guys? All right. Let's do it. We kick things off with Cam Newton, who was repeatedly asked about race during player availability yesterday. Take a listen. Well, Stephen A., he certainly has the platform. What's your reaction to what we just heard from Cam?
Well, I think that you heard the reporter, and I'm certainly not going to call out reporters. Everybody has a job to do, and I respect that. But you had the reporter going at him as if he instigated something when essentially he was answering a question. And at times, I think that we need to recognize as members of the Fourth Estate, as journalists, that you want to open a box and a guy goes in and he takes you up on your offer. Don't knock him for doing so. Cam Newton is a quarterback who happens to be great, who happens to be the imminent MVP as far as most of us is concerned. You asked him a question. He is a young black man. He answered the question, and he's not apologetic about it. I personally have no problem with it. And then we obviously have a situation where ESPN did a poll, and I wasn't sure that I was really too keen on that idea of it, to be quite honest with you, because on its face, I didn't think it was necessary, but it's the worldwide leader for a reason, and it has a right to do what it believes is best. It's a touch on issues that permeate our society, and that's what it did here, so I applaud it. But let's look at the statistics. When they talk about this poll that went on, they said nearly 2 out of 3 fans, 62% overall, believe that any criticism of Cam Newton is because of his style of play on the field. 63% of white fans, 38% of black fans. Only 14% thinks it's because of just race. But then it goes further by saying, Skip, the number of people who think race is a part of how Cam Newton is perceived is significantly higher amongst blacks. Okay? 34% think the criticism is racially biased, while 38% think it's for his flashy style. What people need to understand is that we want to act like everybody's the same. We are all human beings. We are all human beings created by God, and most of us are God-fearing and loving people. But the reality is that we are different. White folks are different than black folks. Black folks are different from Hispanic folks. The problem isn't the fact that we're different. It's that we're not willing to embrace our differences in a fashion that is not acerbic, that is not incendiary, that is not, at times evil. And instead of just embracing it and saying, okay, you think differently than I do, sometimes we use it to knock folks down. And that's what those are the kind of things that Cam was alluding to. When you are a quarterback, particularly when you look from a historical perspective, Skip, if you are a black quarterback, people perceived that you were at that position because your athleticism. Why did the issue of the black quarterback or the plight of the black quarterback become such a huge issue in NFL lore? It was because for so long the perception was out there that blacks weren't intelligent enough to play the position. That is a fact. That's how people felt. Well, where did black folks get that from? We created that ourselves. We walked around talking to folks and telling folks that we weren't intelligent enough to play the quarterback position. Hell no, that didn't happen. That was from other folks who perpetuated that stereotype. And so when you, from an historical perspective, had that to overcome. Just because you overcame it to some degree, considering the fact that Cam Newton is now the sixth black quarterback to play in the Super Bowl, the fourth consecutive Super Bowl where a black quarterback was was in the Super Bowl. Even though those issues have been overcome, the residue, the effect, is still there. Because it's still fresh in the mind of the black community. It might not be fresh in the mind of Cam Newton because he overcame it. It might not be fresh in the mind of Russell Wilson. He overcame it. It might not be fresh in the mind of the Doug Williams of the world, okay, and people like that.
Yeah.
But it still resonates to a community because those who don't play quarterback, those who are not playing football, still have to live in modern-day society where constantly the challenges of being black are something that we deal with in a very profound fashion every single day. You can't find a black person in the United States of America that does not believe that they are judged differently, that there are not obstacles that they have to overcome just because of perception. And I think where a lot of white folks make the mistake, if I may say so, is that if you say something about one of them, folks embrace it as if you're talking about all white people. We have evolved as a society. Whatever was said and whatever was exercised and whatever was employed by white America in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s and even times before that, and even as late as the 70s, although there are still trials and tribulations to overcome, there is no question that we are a better society today than we were in years past. There's no question that we have advanced as a society. There are no question that throughout American history, it wasn't just blacks fighting on behalf of ourselves. There were white folks assisting blacks in fighting against racism, civil rights violations, and beyond. A matter of fact, if there were white people that were willing to step forward and assist black folks in their quest for equal rights and beyond, we may not have gotten to the points that we have gotten to. So once we understand that we are all in this together, and that when folks are pointing out the trials and tribulations that we endure from a black perspective, and we're pointing the finger at somebody white who happens to have done something to us, that is not saying, oh my goodness, all white folks are this way, all white folks are that way. We're saying that it's still a problem by some, albeit probably a small minority, but it's still something that we have to deal with because that small minority might screech the loudest, might be heard, and might give the perception to taint their community in such a fashion that black folks are looking at and saying, what the hell is going on? What are you going to do about this? If we understand that, then we move forward. But when you have a reporter who's coming at Cam, and he's coming at Cam in such a way where he's saying to Cam Newton, well, you brought it up, and well, actually, that's not true. He was asked about it. And not only was he asked about it, he basically said, I'm different. You have never seen anybody like me. This is what I bring to the table, and as an African-American quarterback, I'm going to have some of these things to deal with. He did not sit there and say, white folks are this, white folks are this, white folks are that. What he said was, this is what I have to deal with. And by the way, how inconceivable is that? Cam Newton was, went to Florida, got pushed out of Florida, went to some no-name junior college, won a national championship, came back to Auburn, won a national championship, came to the pros. Now he's in the Super Bowl. He was the Rookie of the Year. He was a Heisman Trophy winner. He has accomplished a bevy of things. But we also saw, and to some degree witnessed, a level of scrutiny that he received in the midst of all of that stuff that may very well still resonate with him. Who is anyone to question that about him and what he had to endure and how it may still sting? Who is anybody to sit there and assume that just because he's successful with the Carolina Panthers, that, oh my goodness, he's not going under any scrutiny? He's walking the streets of the Bible Belt in Charlotte, North Carolina. And even though they may be celebrating him now, it was always that way. That he never had to deal with any scrutiny. That he hasn't listened to people telling him to grow up. That he hasn't listened to people saying to him, we don't like the way that you are. You need to exercise some level of humility. How do we know about the emails that he received? How do we know what he was subjected to? Those are the kind of things that people need to take heed to. It's not to point the finger and say, you're at fault, you're wrong, you're evil, or what it is. It's nothing like that. It's just simply understanding that when you are different, you have different experiences. Black folks have different experiences than white folks in the United States of America. It is a fact. Now, we're overcoming it more and more every day. I'm proud to be an American. I'm proud, even prouder to be a black man. But make no mistake about it, despite my proudness and whatever, it doesn't mean that some days the road ain't hard. And if it's hard for me, and if it's hard for Mr. $100 million man in Cam Newton with $60 million guaranteed, could you imagine how hard it is for the average brother out here? I can't even begin to describe that. So when Cam Newton opens his mouth and he speaks, he's not just speaking about himself. He's speaking on behalf of a community that is relatively voiceless. And somebody like him alludes to the platform that he has, because when he opens his mouth, you are forced to listen and thereby adjust yourself in such a fashion where you have to take heed to what he says, because the typical black man out here can open his mouth and sing to the high heavens. He can go on Twitter and Facebook. He can do anything he wants. Nobody is going to pay attention. You don't get to ignore Cam Newton. So as a result, Cam Newton is saying, I'm speaking and you can't ignore me the way most folks in my community are feeling ignored. I applaud that. I thank him for it. I appreciate it. And now we move forward.
This topic is getting trickier and trickier to talk about. I applauded what Cam initially said because I believe he spoke straight from his heart. And now I'm going to speak from mine. I am clearly a white guy, so I'm going to have a very different perspective than you bring to this. And yet I'm a white guy who had maybe some different experiences than most white guys did. If I can go back to my high school days, because I had a lot of rebel in me, my favorite athlete in my high school days, and it was a long time ago, was Muhammad Ali. You can ask my mama if I didn't have Ali's Sports Illustrated cover up on my wall where he's standing over Sonny Liston after he shocked him. And what did I love about Muhammad Ali? He had the guts to stand up as a black man, obviously, and brag and boast and trash talk and back it up. Time and time again, he backed it up, and I loved him for that. My second favorite athlete, I had his Sports Illustrated poster up on my wall, was Joe Namath. Why? Because he dared to be different, to shatter the mold of the quarterback. At that point, mostly the white quarterback. In fact, it was all white quarterback at that point. And yet, Joe Namath, as we all know, he wore white cleats when everybody else wore black cleats. And it wasn't because it was a white statement, it was an anti-white statement that he was making. He had the long hair flipping out from under his helmet, and he was Broadway Joe. He lived the nightlife, and he loved it and made no apologies for it. Which brings us to the present with Mr. Cameron Newton, who stood up and made a very strong and bold statement straight from his heart. I'm going to say it again, just to reiterate what started this. I've said since day one, I'm an African-American quarterback that scares people because they haven't seen nothing that they can compare me to. That's the quote. And it left me wondering just a little bit. I loved what he said, but I had to read into it. This is why that reporter was trying to follow up, say, can you elaborate? Because I think, if I can speak for some white people, not all of them, but some, it left us wondering exactly what that meant, because it was a little cryptic. It left room for interpretation. Is he talking about we haven't seen anything like the way this quarterback celebrates on the field? Or is it, as some of our analysts have tried to convince me of, that he was strictly talking about his abilities? We've never seen this combination of abilities on the football field. This size, this strength, this ability to run like a tailback and throw like a drop back passer, as well as anyone we've ever seen. It's a lethal combination for the opponent. So is that what we're talking about? Or are we just talking about celebrations? And it left me wondering, because he identified, remember, he didn't have to do the racial identification. Didn't he volunteer that? He wasn't asked about being an African-American quarterback. He went there, right? Mm-hmm. So Stephen A., as you know, unfortunately, we're talking about a young man here. But when you broach that subject, and I loved it that he broached it because it's made for some great dialogue, especially between the two of us right here. Mm-hmm. But you have to be careful that you elaborate to the point we all understand where you're going, because I'm still not exactly sure where he was going. I'm not sure. I think I know, but I'm not sure. You think you know, but he didn't get into details about, is he responding to criticism? And if so, which criticism? That one woman in Nashville, I keep telling you, that's the only public criticism I know of. If there's private criticism or past criticism that he has endured, which well could be the fact, I almost wish he had detailed his past criticism, okay? Okay, now let me go one other direction before you respond to this.
Sure.
My history with the black quarterback is lengthy and historic, because I had the privilege of covering the first consistent starting black quarterback in the National Football League in the mid-'70s for the old Los Angeles Rams, James Harris. Knew him well. His mantra to me was, please don't call me a black quarterback. I'm just a quarterback. James Harris wasn't very athletic. If you want to know the truth, he was shattering the mold. He was as beautiful a passer as I have ever seen as a 6'5" drop-back quarterback. I spent a whole week with Doug Williams before he was drafted. Wrote a big splash bombshell story in the LA Times. This kid is special. Not very athletic, to tell you the truth. 6'5" pure drop-back quarterback, right out of the Peyton Brady mold. Really? Won the first Super Bowl as a black quarterback. Great. And then through the years, I went back last night and I totaled up how many black quarterbacks have we seen start consistently in the National Football League, start significant games? We're up to 41. So we've come a long, long ways. Would you believe that over the last 15 years, we've had 4 #1 overall picks as a black quarterback. And over the last 20 years, we've had 22 black quarterbacks drafted in the first or second round. Is that not progress? Is that not significant? To me, it's to the point where, if I may, you can laugh at me if you want, I don't see color anymore. I just see quarterbacks, okay? So it stunned me that all of a sudden I had to recalibrate my thinking as a white guy and say, oh, wait a second, Cam wants to be called a black quarterback because he's embracing his culture and his roots. And I thought, wow, that's interesting. So I had to reposition my thinking about it, because it's breakthrough. It's trailblazing, okay? We've come full circle from don't call me a black quarterback to do call me a black quarterback, okay? Go ahead.
Allow me to help you out here. I'll preface my comments by saying what I'm about to say is about the white-black dynamic. It's not about Skip Bayless. I sit across from you every day, and I'll vouch for your fairness and your open mind. You say what you say, and you feel what you feel, and you're very open about it. And one of the things that I think that folks in white America don't realize about black folk is that if you're open and honest about where you stand and why, we respectfully disagree with you, but we respect the fact that you're open about it. What black folks in America have a problem with is that proverbial iron curtain, per se, or that glass ceiling.
I hear you.
Where, you can't, it's something other than a meritocracy.
Okay.
Okay? You ain't judged on just merit. When you talk about Cam Newton, and you talk about what he said and what the reporter asked, what you're missing, and I'm not trying to call out the reporter in any way. He was doing his job, and I respect that. But essentially what you're saying is you wanted Cam Newton to come out and to detail exactly what he was talking about. Let me tell you something that black folk know about a lot of white folks in America that y'all don't realize. When you want the details, it's so you can pick apart what to knock down, when in fact we're talking about the overall ambiance, cadence, and perspective that you're bringing to the equation more so than the actual facts of a particular situation.
What if it just closes your case? What if the details close your case?
Well, what I'm saying to you is this. Cam Newton can talk about emails. Cam Newton can talk about being attacked. Cam Newton can talk about being addressed on a particular incident. And you'll have white folks in America that says, well, that's this and that's that, but that's not necessarily me. I don't necessarily feel that way. But what he's pointing out is that it's something that is permeated throughout his life. It's something that he has experienced. And we have gotten to a point in our society where we want specific explanations to knock down stuff rather than deal with what's real. White folks have perceptions about black guys that may act the way that Cam Newton. You're trying to tell me that it's beyond the pale to imagine, to assume that white folks look at Cam Newton and they say he needs more humility. He needs to calm down. He needs to appreciate the position that he's in. Okay? You trying to tell me that In corporate America, when black folks and white folks are working, a white guy is sitting there and is like, hey, congratulations, I'm supposed to be here. Whereas a black person is treated as if they should be thankful they are there. These are the kind of things. Now, whether they're factual or not is not the point. The point is, that's how black folks feel. It's entirely different than white folks. And no matter how many times you say it, there is a different perspective that is adopted depending on which group you are from. I am very, very big on respect. I'm very, very big on merit. Why? Because it's the only thing that I can gauge as to whether or not true fairness actually exists. When people try to convolute the argument, what happens is they're trying to have an escape route, to sit there and have plausible deniability in their favor, to say that's not true, that's not true. But what you cannot deny is the fact that this man feels the way that he feels. You have to deal with that. And by asking him, the more you ask him and implore him to be specific, then you're asking him to engage in a level of history that he may not want to go down that road. And more importantly, the more specifics you ask for, the more you're trying to knock down his perspective. You're not going to knock down his perspective because what he feels is what he feels. You have to deal with what he feels as opposed to what you interpret his facts to be.
If I deal with it, then it makes me feel guilt and shame for what went on before me.
Sure.
And
that's not right.
I can't fix it. I try to be the best I can be right here, right now, and in the present.
Right.
And I don't want to feel guilt and shame because I'm trying to do it the right way.
Well, let me tell you this. I would make the argument that's how Barack Obama became the president of the United States. 69 million people voted for this man. There's only 30+ million blacks in America. So where the other 30+ million come from? It came from a generation of folks who obviously felt a level of guilt because of what has happened in this country historically.
Or maybe they just thought he was the best candidate. Is that possible?
No, not 30+ million. 30+ million? Come on now. Again, this is what I'm talking about because what I'm trying to say to you, of course there are many millions who obviously felt that he was the better candidate.
By the way, twice.
That's
twice
right,
they did.
Twice.
Yes.
But there is no question that there was guilt on a part of at least a small segment of this nation, which includes millions, who obviously felt that way. What I'm trying to say to you is when something like that is a fact, that obviously it speaks to what has happened historically. Now, you could sit there and say, it's a different day. Well, damn it, then treat it like it's a different day. Instead of sitting there and looking for excuses to knock it down and knock down those perceptions, simply stand up and say, hey, he's got a point, but you know what? It's a new day, and we're going to move forward, and we're going to do things differently, and then everybody would be fine, as opposed to sitting there and going to your default position and acting like it's overblown, it's a bit exaggerated, it's not true. You can't say that to black people because they will tell you, no way in hell do we feel that way. You could talk until the high heavens, but the divide will be as wide as the Pacific Ocean because that perspective and that perception will never fade from the psyche of an African American community. It will never happen.
Well, speaking of the Pacific, thank you. Well deserved. Speaking of the Pacific, that's why I'm back to specifics. Because I need some details. If you were upset, Cam Newton, with X, Y, or Z, and you say, don't give me details because the white community wants to shoot them down, I just want to know what they are so we can fix those details. And I don't know them. I know one woman who wrote a letter.
But how do you fix an email? How do you fix him walking
what's an
down?
email? I don't know an email.
Let me explain. How do you fix him walking down the streets of Charlotte or walking in some other city and somebody said, how do you fix when he's walking through the tunnel? Do you remember footage of LeBron James in the playoffs and some lady literally screamed something so awful at him? LeBron just turned around and just looked at her like, what? You know, and everybody was like, wow, that was really, really bad. But they never showed her face. You never knew her name, but she screamed at him from the stands. I'm saying to you, something like that. He didn't talk about it after the game, but something like that. You don't think he goes home and says, wow, damn. That was real mean, what she said. That was real evil. It's really bad that somebody would feel that way. I'm trying to say, you know how many incidents a player, particularly of African-American descent, can point to talk about how they went through that, they endured that? That's I can't even repeat over FCC airwaves, the stuff that gets said to me on a weekly basis. I'm just a different kind of brother. It don't matter to me. Bring it.
I got it.
I'm fine. But other people ain't like that. Other people ain't like that.
Look, is there racism still in this country? You
Yes.
better believe there is. I'm the first to embrace the fact there is racism,
we've improved
right?
as a society, though.
Okay,
We have.
okay, I got it. But in this case, I think a lot of white people are still sitting back thinking, man, we came so far in pro football trying to not see color at quarterback. And here's a kid that I think a lot of people, white people love. They
do.
Yeah, okay, so
But not
it's hard,
everyone.
but it makes everybody, the white people, uncomfortable. Like, what did we do wrong here? We don't know.
Skip, 100 million white folks can be fans of Cam Newton, and 1 million can hate him. But the things that the million say may be so piercing, so stinging, that it stays with you.
Okay,
And so it's
but I don't know the million. I don't know anything.
But he does.
Okay.
He does.
If-
And that's all that matters. He does. We're not saying if he sat there and said white America feels this way, you'd have a point. He's like, no, but the experiences that you go through, although from a very small few, can sting in
Sure.
such a way
Absolutely.
that it stays with you. That's being black in America, bro.
Okay,
It is.
But I keep hearing all through the last 2 weeks, Cam has been so criticized this football season. And I keep saying, by whom? Where? How? One woman wrote a letter and then apologized for what she wrote to the letter to the editor, the Charlotte
I got you.
Observer, right?
I got you.
Okay, I don't know.
Riveting debate to start off the show, guys, right? And we appreciate, as always, Cam in terms of his authenticity, using his platform for a positive and being so aware. But first take, we're about to take it up a notch right now because look who is here. Brandon Marshall, at the DiGiorno, make the right call pick board, one of the best pass catchers in the NFL, making his pick.